So what I want to do here is have a discussion about Rogue and trace the development of her character from a supervillain to one of the most powerful and popular members of the X-Men team. And what I'm hoping is that by the end of all this, you'll have a better understanding of her character, as well as have some measure of preparation for our upcoming discussion about all new Avengers with regards to the Civil War II lead-up. So while Chris Claremont had initially planned to introduce Rogue in issue number 25 of the Carol Danvers Ms. Marvel series, because the publication was abruptly cancelled with issue number 23 due to poor sales, Claremont was forced to wait 2 more years to debut the character, which came about in the pages of Avengers Annual number 10 in 1981. While the reasons for Claremont's creation of Rogue have not been specifically explained, Rogue fits in perfectly with a long line of female characters created by Claremont within the X-Men universe, which includes Mystique, Kitty Pryde, Emma Frost, Psylocke, and Jubilee. Jumping forward a bit to 2005 with Rogue's 6-issue limited series, while her character's real name had remained completely unrevealed for over 20 years, following the rise of her popularity and with the release of the X-Men film in 2000, Rogue was provided an origin of her own, detailing the complete events of her backstory. Going by the name Anna Marie with no last name having ever been given in the comics, Rogue grew up in Caldecott, Mississippi, where she was raised predominantly by her father and Aunt Carrie, a strict but dutiful caretaker following her mother's untimely death. As Rogue began to mature into a teenager, she began to manifest her power to absorb the memories and abilities of anyone she came into contact with, the first occurrence taking place when she kisses her boyfriend Cody Robbins, during which time she absorbs his life force and renders him comatose. Following this, the experience left Rogue traumatized as she was faced with the reality that she'd never be able to live a normal life because of her mutant ability, and began the practice of completely covering her skin so as not to endanger those around her. Following the incident with Cody Robbins, the boy's father gathers a mob and sets out for Anna Marie's house. While her father is able to hold the mob off long enough for Anna Marie to escape into the swamps of Mississippi, her journey leads her into a woman named Raven Darkholme, better known as the shape-shifting mutant Mystique. Taking Rogue under her wing, Mystique effectively becomes an adoptive mother of sorts, and under her tutelage, Rogue begins using her powers to help further the cause of Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, leading to her first appearance in Avengers Annual number 10. Opening up with Spider-Woman Jessica Drew rescuing a woman who had fallen off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, after Jessica gets the woman to the hospital, one of the doctors reveals that the woman appears to have almost no brain activity, with her mind functioning at the level of a newborn. Finding herself joined by Lieutenant Sabrina Morell of the San Francisco Police Department, Jessica Drew is informed that the woman is not just any Jane Doe, but is actually Carol Danvers, who's been missing for 6 months. Unsure of what to do, Spider-Woman calls for help in the form of Professor Charles Xavier, who agrees to come to San Francisco to examine Ms. Marvel telepathically. During his examination, he discovers that Carol Danvers' memory and conscious mind have been completely erased, and after digging further, Professor X is also able to identify Carol Danvers' attacker as a mysterious woman named Rogue. From here, we switch to New York City, where Rogue has attacked Captain America. Defeating him with extreme ease, this particular scuffle provides us with the first instance of Rogue's abilities on display. Through her contact with Ms. Marvel, Rogue has absorbed both Carol Danvers' memories and her powers, including super strength, speed, and flight. Rogue also explains that since she maintained contact with Carol Danvers for an extended period of time, instead of gaining these abilities temporarily, Rogue's current power set exists as part of her indefinitely. Throwing Captain America through one of the windows of Avengers Mansion, prompting the team to send out a distress call to Iron Man, the story reveals that Tony Stark had been incapacitated by Mystique, who gained entrance to his laboratory by disguising herself as Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. Following this, Mystique reveals that where the Brotherhood previously existed as a group of mutants led by Magneto, and fighting on behalf of mutant rights, albeit using vigilante tactics, following Magneto's previous defeat by the X-Men, Mystique had taken over the team, with Rogue operating as her apprentice. Switching back to Avengers Mansion, Rogue becomes involved in a scuffle with Thor, Spider-Woman, Vision, and Wonder Man Simon Williams, where she succeeds in absorbing Thor's powers and dispensing with the rest of the team before making her escape. Now, following this first appearance, which functioned as a way for Mystique to display her new role in the Marvel Universe and provide us as the reader with a display of Rogue's abilities, within the larger universe, Rogue made scattered appearances in some of Marvel's less popular books, including the solo series of Dazzler and Rom the Space Knight, before returning to the forefront in Uncanny X-Men number 170. Centering on Rogue leaving Mystique and seeking out Charles Xavier, the story revealed that as a side effect of her absorption of the memories of others, particularly Carol Danvers, Rogue has been experiencing a great deal of psychological stress, including her inability to separate the thoughts and memories of others from her own. And so after performing a psychic evaluation on her, Professor Xavier not only admits Rogue to his school for gifted youngsters, but also makes her a probationary member of the X-Men team, a decision that angered the existing team to the point that Storm and Nightcrawler threatened to leave. While their decision results in staying with the X-Men, this comes by way of Professor X arguing that turning away Rogue's request for help would actually go against the overall mission of the group. In addition to this, because the character of Rogue also served as a way to maintain the element of Carol Danvers without the concern of readers forgetting about her, the Rogue-Carol Danvers dichotomy served as a central part of her character. Where Claremont's initial foray into Rogue's time on the X-Men focused on her gaining the team's trust in issues 173 and 179, the ongoing struggle for control of her mind came to a head when the Carol Danvers persona was awakened after Rogue hears a message on the answering machine of Charles Xavier from Carol's former boyfriend, Michael Rossi. Sensing that Rossi is in trouble, Rogue rushes to the SHIELD helicarrier where he's being held prisoner, rescues him, and takes him to the childhood home of Carol Danvers in Massachusetts. However, when Rossi comes to, instead of viewing Carol Danvers, he instead hears Carol's voice coming from Rogue, who explains that when she absorbed Carol's powers and memories, she also absorbed the feelings that Carol had for Rossi. To this end, Rossi rebukes Rogue's outpouring of emotion and leaves in anger. Now, after this encounter and going into the future of her character, because fan reception was strong regarding the idea of Rogue and Danvers fighting over a physical body, Claremont continued the theme in Uncanny X-Men number 236, with Rogue having suffered a sexual assault at the hands of a team of Denosian prison guards while being held captive. As a result, the trauma of this incident forces Rogue to retreat as far as she can within her own subconscious and brings her psyche face to face with the psyche of Carol Danvers, convincing Rogue to let her take control in order to rescue Wolverine and escape the prison. While Rogue is initially afraid of Danvers not relinquishing control of her body, Rogue reluctantly agrees, after which she and Wolverine were able to succeed in their escape. Following these events, Rogue continues to house both her own personality and that of Carol Danvers within her own mind, and at one point, Danvers' psyche is so firmly in control that she adopts the Ms. Marvel costume. Where this transformation only took place for a couple of issues due to fans hating the idea, in Uncanny X-Men issues 246 and 247 titled The Day of Other Lights and The Light That Failed, during a battle with Master Mold, the original Sentinel Matrix created by Bolivar Trask, the Carol Danvers persona is knocked unconscious, allowing Rogue to take back control of her own body. Where the ensuing skirmish would see Rogue captured by Master Mold in an attempt to distract the rest of the X-Men from their mission to destroy him, Rogue is able to send a telepathic message to Psylocke, informing her and the rest of the team to focus all of their energy on Master Mold instead of attempting to free her from his grasp. As a result, Rogue is seemingly killed off when both she and Master Mold were sent through the Siege Perilous. Now, where Rogue would remain absent from the pages of the X-Men comics for over a year while Claremont focused on introducing Gambit and providing a more complete backstory for Storm, her reappearance came in the pages of Uncanny X-Men number 269 after being spat out by the Siege Perilous at the X-Men's base in Australia. Now, while I haven't been able to find a definitive source for this, with the X-Men the Animated Series looming on the horizon, it would stand to reason that Rogue's return was a combination of both fan feedback and the popularity of her character, resulting in her appearance as part of the show. As a result, a clean slate was issued with issue number 269, and that immediately upon her reappearance, Rogue learns from a television news report that her adoptive mother Mystique has been killed by an unknown assassin. Distraught, Rogue attempts to locate the X-Men and in the process realizes that because the Siege Perilous operates to provide new lives for those that pass through it, not only has Carol Danvers been purged from Rogue's mind, but the powers of Danvers have been completely removed. Where the story would go on to see Rogue confronted by Carol Danvers' mind, which had manifested as a wholly separate entity, leading to a foray into the Savage Land and a rescue at the hands of Magneto. After taking up as Magneto's unofficial love interest for a time, Rogue's powers were restored by the Priestess Zaldane of the Sun People, who in turn was killed by Magneto. Realizing the truth of Magneto's heart and that he seemed, for all intents and purposes, to be beyond redemption, Rogue eventually abandoned the Savage Land, returning to the X-Men team proper. During this time, and leading up to the launch of the animated series, in October of 1991, the X-Men comics experienced a major shakeup with the launch of X-Men Volume 2, Issue Number 1, written by Chris Claremont and drawn by Jim Lee. Published alongside the Uncanny X-Men line, both Uncanny and X-Men Volume 2 restored the roster of the team's most popular members, ending the Louise Simonson era of X-Factor and bringing all the mutants under one fold, operating as two teams. Spanning the course of the first 3 issues, within the comics themselves and because of the immense size of the new X-Men team, Cyclops suggested to Professor Xavier that the team be split into 2 units, the Blue Team and the Gold Team, and Rogue is placed on the Blue Team under the command of Cyclops alongside Wolverine, Gambit, Psylocke, and Beast. It was during this time that Rogue's most well-known romantic relationship began to take shape, as she and fellow X-Man Gambit began their tumultuous relationship. Although it was clear that Rogue and Gambit had strong feelings for one another, their relationship faced its fair share of challenges, most notably the fact that Rogue's mutant ability made physical contact between herself and Gambit impossible. Where these themes and others would be explored more fully in both the X-Men the Animated Series and the subsequent stories that unfolded in the comics to mirror the show's popularity, over the next few years, Rogue remained on the X-Men and a relationship with Gambit remained a focal point of her narrative. However, because the immediate and eventual departures of Claremont and Jim Lee had removed the 1-2 punch of the X-Men series regarding both art and writing styles, the work of Scott Lobdell and others was considered a bit lackluster and fluctuating, and that Rogue saw her powers both increase and decrease at various times, as well as temporarily lose them in their entirety during a battle with Vargas. While this standard of bouncing around would continue throughout the late 1990s, with the early 2000s seeing Joe Quesada take over as editor-in-chief, as part of his rework of the X-Men franchise during the X-Men Reload event, Volume 2 was renamed to New X-Men with writer Grant Morrison being brought on board, the Uncanny X-Men line was continued, and a third title called Extreme X-Men was launched, with Chris Claremont returning as writer. While Claremont's time on the title lasted 4 years with the series garnering a lukewarm reception, on the whole, it became clear to both fans and critics alike that the 90s version of Rogue would never return. With the Extreme X-Men centering on a version of the team that operated globally, Rogue's time under Storm's leadership in the title between 2001 and 2004 saw a rehashing of 90s storylines, including the search for Destiny's Diaries and the return of Vargas. As a result, and going into 2004 and 2006 respectively, Extreme X-Men was cancelled, the plot threads were rolled over into Uncanny X-Men, and Mike Carey took over the writing duties. During Carey's tenure on the book, Rogue's profile grows in a major way. In issue number 192, Rogue is permitted by Cyclops to select her own team as he and Professor X took many of the X-Men into outer space during a battle with Vulcan as part of the Ed Brubaker Deadly Genesis miniseries, with Iceman, Cannonball, Sabretooth, Lady Mastermind, Karina Sharpandar, and Mystique becoming part of the team. After leading the group to victory against a supervillain group known as the Children of the Vault, Rogue announces that her team will leave the X-Mansion, after which Rogue's X-Men encounter the supervillain Pandemic, who injects Rogue with a virus known as Strain 88, in the hopes of copying her powers for himself. To this end, the effect of the virus is that Rogue's powers were amplified to such a degree that she causes instant death to anyone she touches. Following this, in issue number 199, Rogue absorbs over 8 billion psyches from the Shi'ar superweapon known as a Hecatomb and housed these psyches within her own mind. Leading into the events of Messiah War, Messiah Complex, and 12 Lights, because these stories focus on the birth of Hope Summers as the first mutant after the House of M, Rogue was captured by Mr. Sinister's Marauders with the help of Mystique, who along with Gambit had been working for Sinister. Finding themselves successful in temporarily acquiring Hope Summers prior to Cable taking her into the future, Mystique touches the face of Hope Summers to the face of Rogue, and while Rogue is revived, she's also cured of the multiple psyches within her own mind. Using the events as a means to rework Rogue's powers, with X-Men Legacy serving as a continuation of New X-Men with a different name, writer Mike Carey established that Rogue's powers had never matured to their fullest potential due to mental walls that were created each time she absorbed someone else's powers. As a result, Professor X destroys these walls and Rogue finds herself in full control of her powers, meaning she can decide whether or not she wants to absorb someone's memories, psyche, powers, or life force, instead of it happening automatically whenever she touches someone. Following this and going into more recent events, after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, Rogue is granted Avengers status as she joins the Avengers Unity Squad, a team made up of Avengers and mutants in an attempt to promote unity between the two groups and repair the public perception of mutants. Written by Rick Remender and taking place in Uncanny Avengers, the threads of Avengers vs. X-Men continued on, and that Rogue harbored a great deal of animosity towards Scarlet Witch, who she blamed for the House of M, which led directly into the events of Avengers vs. X-Men and the death of Charles Xavier. Where the actions of Rogue would see her absorbing the powers of Wolverine, going into a berserker state and killing the Scarlet Witch, with a story tied into the actions of the Apocalypse twins in a plan to frame the Earth for their murder of a Celestial, and a complicated and somewhat confusing set of events, time travel was invoked by Kane the Conqueror, leading to Rogue absorbing the minds and powers of every Avengers and X-Men in existence in order to ward off the retaliating Celestial host and spare the Earth's destruction. And so following these events and going into Secret Wars, in truth, Rogue did not see much in the way of expansion or intriguing storytelling. Instead, emphasis was placed on the launch of the main Secret Wars event itself, and the elimination of dangling plot threads going into the launch of all new, all different Marvel. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and in the next video that we have, we'll have a discussion on the all new, all different Avengers and how that ties into the lead up to Civil War II. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.